A film that is part of our coverage of this year's Oscar-nominated short, and in this particular case, in the animation category, is In the Shadow of the Cypress. And I'm joined today by the two co-creators of the film, Shirin and Hussein. Welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure.
I like to start the interviews by, for our audience who wouldn't have had a chance to see the film in full as of yet, by asking the filmmakers if you could tell us a little bit more about the film and maybe a little bit more about you and how you came to be working on In the Shadow of the Cypress.
Hussein and I, we had already a good collaboration on his previous film, Run, Rustam, Run, and at that time we found out that our cinematic taste is similar to each other, and then we decided to direct an animated short together, and that's why we decided to choose a genre that we both interested in it, and that was a family drama. So at the beginning, we didn't know exactly what to say, and it was going to be about a family, and then about a challenge between a parent and his or her child, and there are some concerns. There were some concerns like immigration, that was one of the sources of inspiration for this film. But other than that, um, our experiences in our personal life, such as the relationship that Hossein has always had with his father, which is quite complicated. And also, my father was a war veteran from the Iran-Iraq war in 80s, and he was injured in that war. All of that were other sources of inspiration for this film, and also the life of the Iranian PTSD living in Iran, and we had a lot of R&D about their life in Iran. And then the location of the film, which is next to Persian Gulf, in the south of Iran. The location of the film had its own impact, because some elements like the whale, the ship, the ocean, when these elements entered in the film, um, they changed the story a lot.
When you initially conceived the film, wasn't the location a landlocked Western province?
Yes, actually, before going to the Persian Gulf, we thought of the location of the film in different locations in Iran, and all of them were landlocked. But I think that the decision for uh, having the location of the film near the Persian Gulf was a wise decision, because it introduced new dramatic potentials and elements into the film, as Shirin told you. But you are right. We were thinking of a location within the territory of Iran, but all of them were landlocked.
I'm curious as well if when you moved the film to a more isolated area, like did the film always center on a trio of characters, or when it was landlocked, were there more characters that were involved in those early forms of the film that you had?
Actually, at the beginning stages, at the initial stages, there were more characters, but gradually and step by step, we came to the conclusion that it's better to keep it minimal, not only by reducing the number of people, but also in the visual elements and even in the music. because by keeping it minimal, we thought that it would be more feasible for us to keep the concentration of the audience on the drama itself, and prevent the audience from being distracted by excessive visual elements.
That kind of leads into a question I wanted to ask about deciding to go dialogue free, because I read an interview and you said that, you know, one of the reasons that you wanted to go dialogue free, I suppose, as well as feeding into the, you know, minimal approach you took, is to not have the audience distracted by subtitles. So could you speak a little bit like that? Like, was there a version of this film where you had tried with dialogue and then you had jettisoned that? Or was that, had you already decided that, you know, when you started building everything up?
No, at the beginning we knew that we are going to make an animated film without any dialogue, because in the previous film that I mentioned, what Hossein was the director, there were a lot of dialogues, and we thought that it was a negative point, because a lot of people couldn't follow the story while reading the dialogues. And then we decided that, okay, in this film we are not going to do that. And beside that, you know, it's more creative to tell a story without any words, and you have to put a lot of more efforts to tell your story. And we think that yes, it's more creative and it's very good. It can show our you know, ability to narrate. And also the you know, the nature of the relationship in this film required that silence. It's not something, you know, abnormal, because in some animated films you see the characters are not speaking at all, but you ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Why they are silent. This is something you know, bizarre. But in this film we think that it's completely natural. they they don't speak to each other.
As Shirin said, we thought at that moment that making a dialogue-free film will be very closer to the true nature and pure nature of cinema and art. And one of the challenges we had was that how to make a dialogueless film while it won't seem artificial to the audience, because as Shireen said, there are a lot of films that want to be silent, but you know, the atmosphere in those films seem very artificial to the audience. They are not convincing. This was our challenge: how to make it convincing and believable for the audience. Also, I should add that what Shireen said about our film, you know, our previous film was understandable and capable of being followed by the Persian audience. But other than that, because all of the words were written in poems, it was very hard for the international audience to follow the words in the film, the film itself, and also the subtitles simultaneously. That's why we decided to make this film without any dialogue, in order to make it more penetratable to the international audience.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to point out for anyone who hasn't seen the film yet, which I presume is the majority of our audience today, is the fact that even though we've spoken a lot about the minimalism of the film and the fact that there isn't dialogue in there, this is one of the most complex emotional animations that I've seen, in the themes that it's dealing with and the multiple layers that it works on. And so one of the things that I read that you had said was that you know, I suppose kind of in the planning stages, you were finding difficulty in bringing it down from like an over 30-minute long runtime down to where it currently sits at just under 20 minutes. So I wonder if you could talk about that, talk about how you know, took this rich story, which it still is, and were able to condense it down to a time that you were happy with, to a runtime that you were happy with.
You know, in order to design and structure everything in a proper way, we thought that we had to give it time. You know, that's why making this film, one of the reasons that making this film took us more than 6 years and a half was that one of the reasons was that we had to give it enough time in order to make it ripe and mature. Uh, Actually, you know, we always uh, say that making a film is like brewing tea or herbal infusion. It needs enough time to get mature, to get ripe. You know, in order to design everything properly, in order to remove every unnecessary part of the film, we had to check it over and over again, and that's why we think that we came to a good combination.
At the beginning, we didn't think about the duration of the film, about the, you know, about anything. We were just concentrating on the story, and then we found out, oh wow, it would be, it need maybe 30 minutes to you know, to be narrated in this film. And then we had a lot of session, a two-person session, to, you know, it was just like a puzzle, and we 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 had to do a lot of things to um, put the story in a very short, more shorter time, to tell the story in shorter time. And it took us a long time to manage the story.
A lot of people, after watching our film, have told us that it didn't feel 20 minutes for them. And this is something that we are glad about that.
No, definitely, because the world completely engrosses you and pulls you in and pulls you into, you know, the relationship between the father and the daughter and their kind of shared goal with, you know, with the whale, who I have to ask about the design, because yeah, if I'm right, like, although obviously this is a, you know, co-produced, co-directed project with both of you, you both took specific kind of areas, like one of you took the backgrounds, one of you took more of the character design. So could you talk about how you split those roles?
Yes, what you see, for example, in the credit in the film, Hossein was in charge of character designing, and I was in charge of background design. But in fact, we did all these tasks together. We had a lot of session to decide about every single thing in this film. And this film is like a carpet.
Hand woven carpet.
Yes, hand woven carpet, and we did it gere by gere.
Knit by knit.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think there is nothing that was done completely um, individually. It's the combination of Hossein and me together. But yes, generally, for example, regarding animation part, layout design, Hossein was a lot more engaged in that part, and I was engaged in the background design, maybe more than Hossein.
I wanted to ask about, because I know that you had issues with, you know, being able to find talent. So I think I've read that there was, you know, mainly you two, obviously the whole way through the project, but there was a third person who was one of your animators who was there from the beginning all the way through. So I'm interested about that relationship, and but also the fact of the difficulty of you being able to find, you know, a wider pool of animation talent because of what's going on in Iran.
Let me tell you something. you're talking about one of our best animators. Of course, we didn't have even one full-time animators. All of them were part-time. But Azad Maroufi is one of our animators that did maybe more than 60 or 65% of the animation of the film alone. And he's a genius. He was my student in the university, and he started his career with us. And actually, let me tell you that the majority of the workload in this film is done just by 3 or at most 4%, despite what you see in the ending title. The majority of them joined us in the last year, while we worked as I told you, more than 6 years and a half, and the majority of this time was worked on by just 3 or at most 4 people. And Azad was one of our team members that allocated the longest time in this film, and I think we owe him a lot for being able to make this film.
Yeah. As well as those challenges, I know that, you were hit with, COVID, then made things go remote. I know that Hussein, unfortunately, you had some health issues as well. I'm curious as to, I read again that you ended up having to kind of devise an unconventional pipeline for production to keep things moving. So I'm curious as to how these, major hurdles, how you, I suppose, adapted to them so that, that you could continue to work on the film and create the film.
As you mentioned, we had to deal with a lot of problems like sanctions, like economic crisis, health issues, devaluation, everyday devaluation of our currency, a lack of skilled animators, and so on and so forth. In this situation, we had to, always we say that making our film was like a guerrilla war. We could not, fight like a conventional war, and it was like playing chess. Every day we had to solve many problems. Every day we had to have some urgent sessions in order to solve a new problem. We had to rely on the people who were not professional enough, but they're very talented in order to be able to overcome some obstacles. And our trust to many of them was paid off. As Shirin told you, it is not something that can be described in this limited opportunity. And when you are under pressure, I think an instinct of emergency awakes in you, and you try to find a creative solution to solve the problems. Whatever we try, we cannot imply what happened to us during this film. We had to overcome severe economic problems, severe political obsessions. We even didn't have access to the free internet. We had to use some VPNs in order to be in touch with each other, especially in the COVID era. We always, every day, we had to check the price of other currencies and gold coins, because our national currency was devaluated and shrinking every day. And we had to work under this mental pressure. As I told you, I cannot convey what happened to us, and what I mentioned here is just like a tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something that COVID era, the difficulties during COVID era was the least maybe important, among all the difficulties that we had in production of this film. The difficulties in the about related to COVID was the the least important.
You know, we made this film with our own pocket, and we didn't receive any governmental financial support. Nobody came to our assistance. You know, let me tell you something interesting. The average income in Iran due to sanctions, because of the sanctions, has decreased to about $200 a month. We had to make this film with our own pocket.
Yes, and that's
Even
why we took a lot of roles ourselves. I mean, Hossein, me, and Azad, uh, in order to not to expend, to to decrease the cost of the film.
if we were in a more normal situation, I think this film could have been lasted for maybe 4 years, not 6 years and a half.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah.
we fought tooth and nail for making this film, actually, without an exaggeration.
And you can see the care and the craft that's in the film. And an element that I wanted to ask you about is, I know that traditionally, I suppose, with most projects, the story comes first, and then, or maybe people are thinking about the visual elements after, once the story is set. But with this, if I'm correct, the visual elements informed the story as much as the story informed the visual elements.
Because we knew from the beginning that the story development phase would last very long, we couldn't postpone the visual development phase to, for example, after we will reach to the proper story. That's why we decided to work on them simultaneously, and I think it was a blessing in disguise. And both of these phases could lend to each other some new elements. They could introduce to each other, they could help to each other. For example, maybe the element of sea and ship first came to existence in the visual development, and after that we introduced them to the story, or vice versa. And I think it was a wise decision to do them simultaneously.
Yes, and the whale. I remember that at the beginning, the story was about, as I mentioned, about the immigration. And then when we changed the location, and then after a long time, we the whale entered in the film, so the story changed completely. And yes, it was a blessing in disguise that at the same time we had to put a lot of time on the story, and then not waiting for the story and starting to design concepts of the film. And yes, they really helped each other, visual elements and also the elements of the story.
Yeah, we've spoken about how the film is it's a kind of very realistic kind of story, as opposed to, when a lot of people, incorrectly, they think of animation, they think of massive fanciful things, as opposed to kind of stories that deal with the themes that we see here in this film. But that isn't to say that there aren't these imaginary kind of elements in there, such as, when the father turns into petals and things like that. So can you speak about adding elements of those, or how those elements came to be, to, I suppose, express the inner emotions of your characters, especially as we don't hear them speak?
Again, it's a bit difficult to answer, but our profession is animation, not live action. And when you have this opportunity to make animated films, you you have access to a lot of elements. For example, you cannot use that petals, or you cannot melt your character in a live action film. So it's a very good idea to use this opportunity in your film, instead of, for example, we could show the inner feeling of the daughter in another way, but it's more creative to show it melting, or maybe it is running in father's mind. He's he he feels that my daughter is going to die, but it's more creative to show in that way. And some of this decision came to our mind unconsciously. It's not completely, it was not completely conscious. And you know, it's a bit difficult how to explain that, how we chose this, you know, these elements, or even the color, the blue color for the father.
Regarding the blue color, we had to show the inner state of the father with a visual element, and we decided to use a certain color, and among all the colors, we came to the conclusion that maybe blue is the more appropriate one, because, for example, if we used the color red, it would imply the anger, or if we used green, it would show the father being sick. But the only color that we could find, and it could imply the mental state, the inner mental state of the father, was blue. Also, as you know, the blue is a sign of mental. Sometimes, in some cases, it is a sign, a symbol of mental issues, actually, and that's why we chose this color.
Yeah, the film works in a non-linear structure, and I know that when it came to the edit, you you did some work in rearranging the scenes. So I'm curious as to kind of how you came to that decision. You know, obviously, given the long period you had in developing the film and putting it together, then when you got towards the editing stage, what was it that you found more effective by shifting some of the scenes around?
We structured and arranged all the scenes from the beginning. Maybe very few scenes were changed in the editing process, and as I told you, it was because of the time that we allocated at the initial stages, because we knew that let me tell you something. We enjoyed a very good pre-production because we didn't have extra money and extra resources to waste. So everything was, or let me tell you, the majority of things were structured and arranged from the beginning. But regarding the non-linear narrative in the film, uh, because we had to flashback to the father's past, we had to, we wanted to disclose some of a part of the father's past, little by little and gradually during the film. We didn't have any choice, any other choice. We had to go backward and forward from to the past and to the current time, and it was not a choice, it was an obligation. We had to do it, as I told you, we didn't want to disclose everything from the father's past at the beginning of the film. We wanted to disclose it gradually during the film. We wanted the audience to have a certain judgment about the father at the beginning of the film, and gradually we wanted this judgment to be changed about the father.
Yeah. Which makes me think of a question that I wanted to ask. Like you both said at the beginning, that your personal lives have informed this, the story. Hussein, your difficult relationship with your father, and I'm Shireen, the problems that your father had, as a war veteran. But one of the things that I've, that I comes across in this film is there's the level of compassion and caring and forgiveness, as opposed to sometimes when there's a bad relationship between a child and a parent, it clashes and nobody can see the other's side. But this film is full of warmth and loving and understanding, even given I suppose the difficult elements that it grew from. And is that something that over the 6.5 years that you were constructing the film, that perhaps it brought some more of that understanding to your respective fathers and the relationships that you have with them?
You know, as for myself, uh, I think working on this film uh, gave me the opportunity to put myself in my father's shoes and watch the universe from his point of view, and I I I finally managed to forgive him after maybe more than 30 years.
Mhm.
And I think neither me nor Shirin, both of us, are not the same people uh, from 8 years ago uh, when we wanted to start making this film.
Mhm.
And I don't know if Shirin wants to add anything.
Just want to say that I've been always feeling sad for my father because actually he is not a PTSD veteran, but because he has a there is a sharp nail in his skull left from the war because of an explosion, and if he doesn't take his medicine, you know he sometimes behaves maybe a bit strangely and violently. This kind of behavior are similar to those PTSD veteran, and
Yeah.
that's why I could understand what's happening in some PTSD veterans family. And also I was saying that because my father lost one of his eyes in during the war, and at that time he uh, was attending in a pilot course because his dream was being a pilot in the future, and the
Mhm.
health of the eyes are vital and crucial, and
Yeah.
he lost one of them. So always I've had this feeling for my father because he lost his dream. And I don't know, I didn't want to make a film for him and dedicate a film to him, but unconsciously when you have some concerns, they will enter in your film without your, it's not intentionally. And I'm happy for that. And beside that, there are a lot of PTSD veterans in Iran. A lot of them were killed, a lot of veterans were killed in the war. But now we have a lot of veterans still living in Iran. Many of them are in the hospitals because PTSD has a lot of levels. Some of them can still live with their family, but some of them not. They should be all the time in the hospital. And um, in the past, they went they went to war, they went to battle in order to, uh, they were hoping for a bright future. And now I don't know how to say in English, it's very difficult for me. Now they are in the hospital and they know that what is going on outside of the hospital, what is going on in this country after the revolution, after a lot of years, you know and they lost their dreams.
You know, there is a very vast gap and contradiction with what the veterans who went to the war with Iraq to defend our country, there is a very vast gap with what they expected our country to be and what you can see now because of our government and because of the dictatorship which is in our country.
Yeah.
You know, it is very intolerable for them that they sacrifice their lives and their health for the situation that it is going on currently in our country. And this makes made us sad actually, and wanted to give them a voice that despite their sacrifices and despite the fact that their sacrifices were not paid off because of our government and our regime, but there are some people who care about them and can give a voice to them and put a spotlight on them actually.
Yeah. Which I suppose leads into, you know, the recognition that the film has got, rightly so, because it is an amazing film. You know, animation, live action across the board, it is such a fantastic film. And you know, you premiered at Venice, and you played at Annecy and Tribeca, Clermont-Ferrand, won, you know, awards everywhere. And now there's the Oscar nomination, of course. So, you know, especially given the subject matter, you know, kind of what does that mean to you both? You know, that, you know, all this recognition and now the Oscars. Yeah, what does that mean to you both as filmmakers?
Actually, it is like a dream come true because it is the second nomination for the Iranian animation, and if we make it to receive an Oscar, it will be the first Oscar for Iranian animation. And actually, we want to uh, dedicate this. We want to give this nomination and potentially winning an Oscar to our tired nation. Our tired nation are actually are suffering from the dictatorship in our country. Uh, as you said, hopefully we have received a lot of compliments both from film festivals and also from prominent individuals in the industry like John Musker, Tom Moore, Pete Docter, Joanna Quinn, and a lot of other prominent people in the industry. And this makes us glad that after years of working on this film, our efforts and our dedicated works have been paid off.
And it's most well deserved. And yeah, just before I let you go, I wanted to ask, if it's not too early, you know, what are your future plans as filmmakers? You know, is there anything you're working on now or that you're due to start work on soon?
You know, Hussein and I, we always love to make a feature animation film, and because you know, in the field of short films, you can make, for example, experimental film, and maybe the audience is not that much important in comparison with feature animated film, but the audience has always been so important for us, and and you know, actually we love to make another short animated films when we have a lot of ideas, and maybe it will be completely different from this one, and we love to experience you know, another world, another kind of filmmaking in short film. But at the same time, we are really into making our first feature animated film, and there is a specific idea. I don't know if I can talk about it now, but it's really you know, the nomination, the Oscar nomination, really paved our way, and um, I hope we can make it.
You know, as Shirin said, we have a dream both of us have a dream, and our top priority and first priority is to make our first feature-length animated film. And if we make it to win an Oscar, it will be very, very helpful for us to persuade the financier and prospective producers to help us financially, to support us financially. And if not, I think to some extent, to a less extent, I think this nomination will be helpful in this way. And that's why we are very happy about that. Receiving the awards cannot be the ultimate goal, but they can be very helpful and useful in this way. That's why we have to care about them. They are very important to us. They are not our ultimate goal, but they are very important and vital to absorb financial support for continuing our career, actually.
Yeah, well, we'll be crossing our fingers for you when the awards come up. And it was such a pleasure to speak to you both, Shirin and Hussein. Thank you for taking the time out and for taking us inside the creation of such a personal and beautifully crafted piece of work. We really appreciate it here on Director's Notes.
Thank you so much for your time, and it was very enjoyable, meeting, and it was our pleasure, really.
Yeah, it was our honor and pleasure to speak with you. It was nice talking to you, and thank you so much for having us and giving us this opportunity.